Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, I am going to give you 5 of my fantasy takeaways from week 5 of the fantasy football season. Definitely an interesting week. We had some upsets. A lot of road teams won. I'm sure some survivor pools got really messed up. Hopefully you survived if you were in those types of contests. But from a fantasy perspective, we had some takeaways as well that I want to get into. And it's going to be a quarterback themed takeaway episode, quite frankly. I'm going to hit on a lot of quarterback situations and talk about that. So let's get started. And my first takeaway is I don't think Dylan Gabriel is going to be the answer at quarterback for the Browns. Sure, he played fine in that game. He kept them in the game, but he really dinked and dunked the ball down the field. 19 of 33 for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns without a turnover. Those are fine numbers, but he took few chances down the field. You can't play quarterback in the NFL like that and have a lot of success offensively, quite frankly. I think they're going to have to go with somebody who takes more chances down the field, can open up that offense a little bit. From a fantasy perspective, though, I think it's good news for both tight ends, both Harold Fannin and David Njoku, because I don't think they're going to push the ball down the field, like I mentioned, as long as Gabriel's starting. So they're going to get a lot of chances. But for Jerry Jeudy, Bond as well, who's starting now, I don't think it's good news that Gabriel's starting. There is even talk during this game that they're going to give Shedeur Sanders a chance at some point as well, kind of break it up into 3 different seasons there in Cleveland to try to figure out their quarterback situation. So if Sanders gets inserted, maybe that helps. But for now, Dylan Gabriel, I don't think he's going to be the answer in Cleveland. They're still searching for their franchise quarterback. My next takeaway is I think CJ Stroud might be figuring it out in Houston. He has 6 touchdowns without an interception his last 2 games. The receivers are starting to make a lot more plays besides Nico Collins. You have Xavier Hutchinson, Jalen Noel, Christian Kirk. Those guys all got involved, and that's what he needs. He needs playmakers besides Collins getting it done, and these guys are starting to step up, and I think that's a real positive for Stroud. Offensive line also is blocking better. That's been an issue for Houston the last season especially, and I think that led to a lot of issues for Stroud, but I think he could be regaining his form from his rookie season. So that's a real positive for Stroud. I think he could end up being a big help for fantasy teams the rest of the way. My next takeaway is just like in Cleveland, I think Cincinnati's situation, another Ohio team, is just brutal at quarterback right now. They cannot keep going to Jake Browning as their starting quarterback. He has 8 interceptions in 4 games, multiple picks, 3 of 4 games. They need to do something to help those receivers out. I don't know what it is. Maybe trade for somebody. I'd love to see Jameis Winston in there. Just anybody besides Browning, because he's not helping these receivers from a fantasy perspective. And as long as he's starting, I think there's going to be issues. I know Jamar Chase ended up having pretty good numbers this past week, but he did a lot of that in garbage time with the team down big. And it was because Browning kind of dug them in a hole with his poor play early in the first half. So I really hope Cincinnati does something at quarterback, makes a change, and helps those receivers out. My next takeaway is I think Sam Darnold is really showing that he is not a fluke. Last year wasn't a fluke, I should say. He is looking good once again. A 4-touchdown performance this past week. I know he had that bad interception at the end of the game, but that ball went off a defender's helmet, deflected, and that led to the interception. So I'm not really blaming Darnold too much there. I still think he looked really good this past week. He has multiple touchdowns, 3 or 4 games. He's getting more and more comfortable in the Seahawks offense. This offense is looking pretty good too. Jackson Smith-Njigba is having a big season. So I think Darnold is definitely a guy on the upswing. I know some people had some apprehensions about him this year, moving to a new offense, and they thought maybe he was a product of the system in Minnesota. I think he's showing that he can get it done outside Minnesota. He can be a viable fantasy option, and I'm excited about him the rest of the way. Excited to see what he could do. My last takeaway for this week, for week 5, excuse me, is that things are not going to end well in Philadelphia for A.J. Brown. This is going to get ugly, in my opinion. He had 5 catches for 43 yards this past week. Ho-hum numbers, but he was wide open on a deep ball. Jalen Hurts missed him. He has less than 50 yards all but a game this year. You're already hearing he's disgruntled with his opportunities. Devonta Smith had a huge game here. He was the featured receiver. Brown was not. I think Brown's going to end up maybe forcing his way out of Philadelphia. I think it's going to end up getting ugly from a fantasy perspective. You got to just kind of ride it out and hope things turn around. But I just don't see how this is going to end well for Brown in Philadelphia. Normally, winning kind of cures everything when it comes to this type of stuff where you're not getting a lot of touches. If you keep winning games and things are good, but Brown's not happy, and I just don't know that this is going to be a great situation the rest of the season. All right, those are 5 of my fantasy takeaways for week 5 of the fantasy football season. Hopefully you had a lot of success this week, won your fantasy games, came out on top. This has been Jeff Paur for RealTime Fantasy Sports.